Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, Navigating Ethics and Regulations in AI. I'm here with my colleague, Christine Thompson, and we're going to get started here in just a minute. Wanted to let you know that there is a Q&A panel for any questions. And because Christine does like to keep everything very engaging and interactive, there's also a chat for discussion for in the comments. You can go ahead and just put that in the chat if you've got anything to add. Or if you have any stories or anything you'd like to share, Christine would love to hear that. All right.
Before you go ahead, I do see Matthew has his hand raised. Matthew, if you have a question or concern about the webinar, do you want to put it in the chat if you're having issues? Okay, so go ahead. Sorry about that.
Oh, yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for flagging that. I also want to let you know that this is being recorded and we'll send you the link after the webinar. And just in case you did not know, ExitCertified, ExitCertified, and WebAge Solutions is now part of Excel instructor-led training, which is actually great news for you because now we've got access to a ton of resources we didn't all have before, like Christine and her wonderful content. And just to let you know, between the three of our brands, we've got over 60 years of experience in the IT training space. Oh, and by the way, my name is Anne. And before I joined the group at Excel, I was at Accelerate for 13 years, and I'm thrilled to be here. And just to break down the brands just for a moment to let you know the nuances between us, we all work together, but Accelerate specializes in customized courses for teams. ExitCertified is your go-to for vendor authorized certification, and WebAge Solutions is great at upskilling programs for entire organizations. And I could not list every single technology that we teach here because between the three of us, we teach a lot, but we do tend to do a lot of data science, Python, VMware, NVIDIA, AWS, Azure, data engineering, and of course, generative AI. And we're going to meet Christine Thompson now. I think Christine is probably the perfect person to be doing this webinar. She's got 20 years of experience and she brings in technology to different organizations. She's worked with over 40 Fortune 100 companies, and she helps them with their strategy and their education with whatever new technology they're bringing in. And of course, now her focus, because she's changing with the times, is on AI, data science, machine learning. And we're very lucky that she teaches the course, AI security, compliance, and explainability training. This is a 2-day course, hands-on, live and instructor-read, can be customized. So this webinar is really just a 1-hour snapshot of this course. So I know Christine's going to have a lot to get through. So I'm gonna turn it over to you, Christine, so you can dazzle everybody with AI ethics and regulations. So I will be here the whole time, but I will just turn off my camera and mute myself.
Thank you very much for kicking us off. Welcome, everybody. I think to begin with, I just want to do a little poll to see where you're coming from in your exposure to this. So you should see on your screen a question. If you can take just a second to answer this. Maybe just list it off. You should see a little text box where you can put in your answer. So what is your focus in this space, AI and machine learning? If you're just curious, just put it in there, new to it, curious. So I'll just give you another minute or two. And just a reminder that as I go through, because I do have a lot of content, I'll probably defer responding to comments and questions until the end out of respect for your time, so that if you do have to leave at the top of the hour, that I will have covered everything. But if you want to stay at the end, I can go through some of those questions for you. So I see that we've got some good response. Just give it another minute. Okay, so get your answer in there. I'm going to stop the poll in just a moment. Okay, let me end the poll and share out these results. And stop sharing here. Okay, so thank you very much for providing that input. Let me share my screen now. And hopefully I get to the right desktop. Everybody should be able to see the title page here, Navigating the AI Landscape, Ethics and Regulations.
Yep, looks great.
Thank you. All right, let's dive in. What are we talking about here? AI systems. I don't know how many of you have been listening, watching to the news, have actually seen how big AI has become. We have a little headline here, artificial intelligence can predict event in people's lives. Well, it's more than just events like maybe you got a job or you graduated school, but look at this, that this particular model developed at the University of Copenhagen, along with collaboration from the University of Denmark and also Northeastern in the US, basically came up with a system that can actually predict with a high degree of accuracy, over 80% success rate, even in estimating the time of death. Can you imagine that? A computer system gets a hold of your name and is able to provide the results of saying, hey, this is when you're going to die. Would you want to know? And is this a good thing? Is it AI the good or AI the bad, or it depends? So this is the world we're in now. We've got these computer systems doing this kind of work. So in this session, I want to take a look at some of the scope of what AI systems are doing, and then talk about what we should be doing in response. That we all should be committed to having AI systems be good, and to make sure we get rid of, detect, destroy AI systems that are bad. So that will be the meat of our conversation here. That's the AI ethics, the foundation of AI security. And then, of course, once we realize what we're trying to do, how we define what AI, ethical AI is, and the concerns that security has, point to some of the things that are currently in place and under development to mitigate those security risks. At the end, I'll be able to point you to the resources needed if you're interested in continuing to have this conversation and to learn more. And that is when we'll be able to do a little bit of Q&A. And again, as I'm talking, feel free to use the chat for any comments that you want to share with the group, and also use the Q&A option that you should be able to see in your Zoom menu. Typically, it's displayed at the bottom of your screen. And in there, if you put your questions there, I'll be able to find them quickly at the end to hopefully answer them. So diving into the landscape of AI, we're going to start with glossary method. Give some definitions to two key terms that we have in this session, and then take a look at some of the other activities that we have going on in AI systems. So the question, what is an AI system? What do we mean by that term? So we've got two sources here from the OECD's AI experts group and also from Google. Now, the first definition, I think, is really doing a good job of answering the what, right? So we're talking about a computer system that, working with data in, has the logic to generate outputs like the predictions like we saw in the previous example, content, recommendations, even decisions. And this can be working in the real world or virtual world, combination of the above. And then notice down there from Google, AI Google, is that the focus that they have, as do any of the leaders in the AI system world and organizations that are seeking to leverage this shift in the way we're working with our computer systems, is that it would be, let me just get my little pointer here, that this would be beneficial to people and society. This is a revolution. As much as we can say that we had the computer revolution, the internet revolution, like all of this about technology, this is really bringing us to the climax of that. For years, well before we had computers, you can think of science fiction writers were looking for the possibility of having this kind of technology, and now here we are. And this will have an impact on society that is at least as great, if not even more, than what the Industrial Revolution was. But notice this emphasis. This will affect society and people, and we want it to be good. Of course, there are going to be those, the powers that are out there, that are malicious. And we need to make sure that we're wise to that, and we put mechanisms in place to basically prevent the bad from taking over. And what about cybersecurity? So definitely, I think I actually had this discussion last night with my husband. What does cyber mean to you? And we're thinking cyber is about that sort of ethereal world of technology. So when we use the term security with cyber in it, it really is about protecting our technology and what it's doing, its applications and the data. So in both cases here, the two different definitions emphasize the need to protect. That's what we want cybersecurity to do. And that both of them agree that at the end of the day, the output from having good cybersecurity is that you are ensuring confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information, and NIST added in two others, authentication and non-repudiation. So think of the sum of those parts. We're protecting our systems, the data that they work with, such that it benefits people, and that the characteristics are following those attributes. Okay, so keeping that in mind, what an AI system is, and the characteristics of ensuring that it is doing good, what do you think of this headline? And the story behind it, I thought this was really interesting. One of the challenges that you have in a lot of industries, and this example being healthcare, is that really to be able to be good at it, you have to have all the information. And you have to have been able to read all the information and interpret the information. This is what AI systems are really good at. Now, there's a lot of different categories of AI systems, but we're going to be emphasizing generative AI that works, like you've heard of chatbots, maybe. Maybe you've heard the term chat GPT. It's the idea that it has a data source, you put in a request, and it's able to give you its output. Different AI systems can basically write papers for you. Others could actually do the predictions. In this case, they created an AI system to be a clinician. I like the fact that they talk about this being a support tool for physicians. So a physician can't read everything that was published, all the research results. That's what the AI system does. And it has the logic then to give a summary of it, to be able to give recommendations, maybe to help support doing correct diagnosis. So that sounds good, right? This is going to promote good health and good results from our physicians. Notice that we're not at the point yet where we've got an AI system that is a qualified doctor. Question mark, will we ever get there? And if so, when? But do you have any concerns about having a computer system that would be accessing your information and other people's information? How is it recognizing it? Is it treating it with the care and sensitivity that you would expect of people? And is that going to be consistent across the board? Is there a possibility that somebody could get a hold of it that shouldn't have a hold of it? So I would think you're looking at this question, and based on what we've already talked about, that you're going, yeah, I do have some security concerns, but I really like the idea that we're not going to spend years trying to figure out what's going on. We can actually provide recommendations and diagnoses more quickly for people, get them healthier sooner. But the truth is that for as much as we have systems that are capable of doing these things, and the new applications of AI systems comes about every day, there's new headlines every day, that notice that these AI networks, AI systems basically are made up of a lot of moving parts, and they're interconnected and talking to each other, but they're much more vulnerable to being attacked than we actually thought. And it can be really difficult once you've detected it to actually go back and make the corrections. So self-driving vehicles, pharmaceuticals, financial, aviation, news reporting, like the list is endless. The different, like basically there isn't an industry that is untouched, but we're all vulnerable. So what should be done? What can be done, and what's the direction we should be going to make sure that these good AI systems don't get compromised? huge impact on security systems because of AI. This is a good quote from Lars Regé from Forbes. So notice that it's not just about writing good code. This is like if we think of traditional security of applications, you think of like, I'm going to do my banking. So we know that we have our communications from our device to the bank, that's encrypted. I log in. So now I'm able to do my banking on my bank account. And we have a tremendous amount of experience, several decades of us doing this and doing this well. Well, AI is in a completely different level, completely different world. The number of moving parts and the amount of data that we have, all these components that are in different places in the network, and how we have to unify the security around it. It's not that easy. And we're just trying to figure that out. We've got AI systems already being in use when we're still trying to figure out how to make it safe. So this is a short list of some of the concerns that we have in adopting and making use of AI systems. A few to highlight would definitely be the one we talked about, like it starts with the data. So is the data safe? How are we gathering it? How are we storing it? And how are we sharing it? In the conversation about AI systems, models really is the term we're using for the logic, the code, the software itself. Is that something that can be compromised? And what we have now, get a load of this, is that programming languages, when they get written, as they're running in AI, that code changes dynamically, not by a human, but by the logic of the machine itself. And if somebody knows how to talk to the AI system, they could get the AI system to write the code the way they want to. That's a whole different ballgame. Another one I want to highlight, because this is the direction we're going in this conversation, is that we really have a limited level of maturity around regulating the way AI systems get designed, implemented, managed, maintained, and the controls and protection mechanisms around that. We're just starting that. And this is something we'll go into a little bit at the end, but definitely looking at all of those layers and understanding them and knowing the fact that things will change dynamically every day the longer the system runs. Well, definitely we need to have some serious look at how we're actually building and protecting these systems. So without further ado, let's get into the AI ethics. And we're going to navigate through core principles of AI ethics and look at what we're talking about, because we need to agree on what we mean by AI the good. We need to understand and have an appreciation for what it is that needs to be in place for it to be good, and how do we make sure that it gets done right and that it is secure. So our goal is to do no harm. This is from Dr. Amit Ray. And it's interesting here adding in intentional, unintentional. So we can get really focused with external threats, but some AI systems are compromised not because they were attacked, but because they were accidentally misused. So the unintentional is just as much a concern as the intentional. So we want to build ethical AI systems, and we want to set everybody working with it up for success. So the 6 key principles. Now, again, you could Google what the 6 key principles for ethical AI are, and you could actually get a different list, but these ones come up over and over again. So that's why we've identified these for our conversation. So remember what the definition of the cybersecurity is. Look at that list: integrity, authentication, confidentiality, non-repudiation, availability. Now look at the list on the left. Do you see the relationship? So what is the connection between the cybersecurity goals and the key principles that say this is for AI the good? Fairness, accountability, transparency, explainability, privacy and autonomy, reliability. So we're going to go through each of these, make sure we understand and agree on what these are talking about, and then highlight the issues, impact to our security for these. When we talk about fairness, we're talking about ensuring that we're not discriminating, that we are treating everyone as equals. Now, definitely in our culture, in our workplaces, this has been of a concern for quite some time, and we have to keep practicing it and monitoring it and improving it. So this is not a new concept, but understand that when we build an AI system, we're working with data that has to be interpreted. It's a person who's going to write the rules, the logic for how to interpret it. We have human interactions from design to development to deployment to the use of it. And those interactions of people who come in with their own biases, is the opportunity for the AI system to pick up on that and embrace that and become an unfair system. So we need to be checking for unfair biases. This is an ongoing work, and we need to have those that are specialized and skilled at recognizing what classifies as unfair. And is there a way to define it that everybody could embrace? These are actually threats to our security of our AI systems. It could be that me as a cybersecurity specialist could miss a good source, a threat source. I may not recognize that particular system as a threat. That's one way that my bias could actually compromise the security. Another one would be, oh, okay, I've got all the sources, but I don't recognize the threat. It could be that I misinterpret, that I actually see a threat where a threat doesn't exist because of biases or prejudices. And it may be that the output of the results get misinterpreted and misused. So just even me with my team doing the security of AI systems, we can miss things. And this is where I think it's interesting, the evolution of AI is actually to come in as a tool. So we have AI systems that are cybersecurity specialists. And we can actually interact so that we can get better at detecting our own biases, but we can also get the system to detect where biases may have been introduced. All right, so we know about biases and making things fair. Well, at the end of the day, bad things can still happen. You can do everything right and still have things go wrong. So we need to make sure that there's accountability. So accountability needs to be at each step of the way. And in some conversations, talking about accountability, they actually do mention that it should be shared because there's so many moving parts and there's so many people involved. So while it's true that we should all have in what we're doing to be responsible for our own actions, when it comes to AI systems at play in the industry, the second bullet here, that there's a consensus that at the end of the day, the decision makers must take responsibility. And that as such, they're going to be looking for having access control enforced. So who's allowed to do what with an AI system? And again, thinking from the beginning to the end, and that we actually have a way to record what happened. So mandating audits, we're going to talk about transparency and what that means next. But it's, if I'm going to be held responsible for this, I need to make sure that we are protecting the actions of the AI system from misuse. So we're going to lean heavily on securing who gets to do what with the system. Notice this, if YouTube as the host is the one that's posting these videos and is legally liable, they're going to be passing that down, that you need to identify if you're using AI. And just this weekend, we had the news report about Sports Illustrated making a mistake. They actually had AI content being posted as real news, and they're paying the consequence for that now. But we don't have consistency across the board. They're paying the consequence in that people aren't trusting them as a news source. So they're having to lay off massively, but it's not like the courts of law have gone after them to give them a fine. That's something that you would question, is that the direction we're going to go? And in some places in the world, that is the direction they have gone. Transparency, which we mentioned on the previous slide, this is being emphasized. And notice down here, if I can just highlight this last bullet, that there are laws requiring AI systems to have their algorithms published. That's their code. Algorithms is their logic. It's explaining, it's us zooming in, looking inside and seeing, how did you create this? And as such, then we can analyze if actually the code is good or bad. But too much transparency makes us vulnerable. Why would I go in and invest all this time and energy to develop this product only to have everybody being able to steal it? They can see it. And is it possible that in that transparency and fulfilling that law, that we're actually exposing sensitive data, that we're inviting malicious actors to come in, that we're advertising, hey, we're here and this is how you could actually take advantage of us? It's really a whole new layer of this concept of open source. So again, this is a challenge for security specialists, and we need to work with those governing bodies to then determine, what do you mean by publish? In what way? How much of this are we exposing and who has access to it? And was that factored into any laws that have been defined? So transparency is one concept that's being demanded of those that own AI systems. Explainability is another one, but we do tend to really like explainability, both in terms of ownership of the AI system and the management of it, and also as users. So notice this bullet here. Everyone should be able to understand what an AI system does, why and how it reaches its decisions. Notice everyone, that this isn't reserved for just those that created it. It's also for those that use it. As an example, in a financial institution, a bank can choose an AI system to actually process loan applications. And if you got denied the loan, explainability would tell you why it denied your application. Another use of AI systems could be in a hiring process. So we have an AI system that's taking applications to be hired by a company. And if I didn't get hired, I want to know why. What was missing? So explainability is actually a good way to benefit everybody. But further to that, it can actually help us do our security and make sure that everything's working. It helps us with our accuracy, especially if we're continually reviewing and testing our system. If it comes with the baked in logic to explain how it came to the output that it did. And then it can also give us better information about how the decisions are being made and how we're working with the system. It promotes the continuous improvements because, again, it's explaining itself. So it has a sense. Explainability introduces the idea that the AI system is always in a court and it has to defend itself. You asked me this question, I came up with this answer, and I came up with this answer because of A, B, and C, which of course then makes it available for demonstrating its compliance to certain requirements, and it builds the trust. So we like this. But as a security specialist, it does help me address some of my concerns because I'm seeing its rationale. And in seeing its rationale, I can make the judgment whether that was good or bad. When we talk about working with our AI systems, again, it begins with data, large volumes of data. And we have to make sure that it recognizes what is classified as sensitive data and that it then is appropriately storing it and protecting it. So it still has access to it, but we treat it differently. We talk about autonomy when it comes to AI systems in that we create it, it goes out there and it starts doing its work. And as it works, it learns and gets better. Its code is improved. It does that for itself. This is why we use terms like training our AI system and rewarding our AI system, because it does have its own identity in a way. So we definitely want to encourage the proper use of data. And definitely notice this, we want to understand the complexity and the autonomy of it so that we can ensure that we have set it up to be successful and secure. In fact, one of the things we actually like doing with our AI systems is teaching it to detect its own threats, to see if something's coming in that shouldn't. So we want it to actually have the intelligence to know how to be safe out there, to stay AI the good. So one of the things that we add in as a result is that we make sure that we are doing regulated and regular checks, looking at the output and testing it. Notice here we can actually try to attack it. We have the idea of saying, well, I'm going to do something I'm not supposed to do with it as part of the testing phase of an AI system. Will it recognize this is not a good request? Will it recognize that this data is not good? And will it send out alerts? So if it's under attack, does it put out the alarm? Kind of like in a house, A smoke detector is going to set off the alarm. A burglar alarm is going to know when somebody's breaking in. We want our AI systems to take its smarts and its knowledge and to actually have the logic to sound alarms when something inappropriate is happening. And the last one is reliability. At the end of the day, if I'm going to be working with a company, if I'm going to be leveraging the talent of AI systems, I want to know that it's trustworthy, that it's reliable, that it has the ability to know when it should stop. I think of the way Tesla cars, self-driving cars, one of their rules is that they're not allowed to hit people. That's a good thing, right? So they have to recognize people and they have to make decisions about where to go. And one of the things in the beta testing, and if you're interested in this, you can get the footage of it, that if it doesn't know what to do, it stops. That's a good behavior for a car. You're not sure which way to go because of the people here, just stop. Because if you're not moving, you can't hit anybody. So definitely we're looking to be able to know what reliability would be for this system. And again, there's some really good information out there from the big players. We're citing a lot of Google. They've been very active in publishing their findings and making recommendations. So you can definitely look through that. But again, robust security measures have to happen to make sure reliability is there. So again, step number one, know your data and protect it. And obviously part of protecting the data and the system itself is to make sure that you know who's allowed to design and code, who's allowed to test and deploy, who's allowed to use it. We've got the different phases in the life cycle of an AI system, and at each point along the way, we can make decisions about the authorization needed. And that, of course, when we have data in flight, when we have data in storage, any kind of conversation, we want to make sure that it's protected. So working and continually applying advanced encryption techniques to ensure that things like your sensitive data is not exposed, both in terms of the logic and in terms of the use of it. And that we're continually doing this. We don't have the idea of taking an application, testing it, going, yay, this is good, send it off to the server, having it run, and going, we're done. No, you're constantly checking in with it. And again, this is like, you with your children, sending them off to school. You don't just go off and forget. You're checking in with them every day. You're making sure everything's good, that nothing's going on that shouldn't. So we're going to be doing the same thing. You can think of our algorithms. This is the logic that's learning, that's changing. I got to be updating it. I've got to be checking in with it, doing rigorous testing on an ongoing basis. It just doesn't stop. And that because of all the different moving parts, we need to know if the environment changes, that it is still functioning the way it's supposed to. So again, this is where we have to have regular checks. So those are the 6 principles. Now, of course, with principles, and applying security, we want to have some policies and standards around it. This is one of the things that's still a little immature in the industry. So personally, I would like us all to sort of pause and say, let's wait to do AI systems when we figure out how to do this right. But that's a luxury that we don't have. So we have to be very aggressive and forward about addressing these concerns. So again, a reminder, ethical AI really is about cybersecurity. We can't have fairness without the security to ensure the integrity of the system. Accountability requires control over who accesses it. That's authentication. When we're dealing with transparency and explainability and also looking at privacy and autonomy, we really do lean on confidentiality, and accountability is going to require non-repudiation. And that we have, if we're going to be reliable, that we have availability of the security systems themselves, that they're always in play and always on. So cybersecurity is really at the heart of ensuring that we have ethical AI. Ethical AI, another way to word it, is AI the good. Do you want to be part of AI the good? Do you want to make sure that you can take advantage, that you can support your personal life, your jobs in your companies, and contribute to ensuring that we're all participating and contributing the good based on our roles? We're going to be affected by this. How am I using it? Where am I going? What should I be expecting? What checks and balances do I need to have in place? So yeah, we can talk about the decision makers being accountable, but us as users can contribute to making sure things are right, reporting when things don't look right and behaving right, and that definitely we know what we can expect. So with that as a segue into, by the way, there are already some resources in place. So those of you that are looking at adopting and working more with AI, definitely take a look at what regulations have been brought up and some of the tooling that has been put into place to help us address the security risks that we're aware of. Now, it might seem to be stating the obvious, the details really matter. What we've learned about cybersecurity and how we've been protecting our systems is really just scratching the surface of what's really required when it comes to cybersecurity. Making a note about Tom Wheeler. Tom Wheeler was a chairman of the Federal Communications Commission and definitely a visiting fellow of governance studies. So he knows this world very well. And he's identified the 3 key challenges that we're facing. And one of the big ones here is velocity. We're still trying to figure out how to do this right. But the systems are happening, they're being developed, they're being used. So this is a challenge. We're trying to play catch up here. And obviously then if we're playing catch up, we need to really understand the technical stack of AI and the way it's being used and leveraged in different industries around the world. So what is it that we're trying to regulate and who's going to be doing it and how are they going to be doing it? It's happening, but we haven't figured out how we're going to manage this. So I'm going to encourage all of you to actually, when and where you can, to look for these things and to ask the right questions and to push back a little bit. Whether you're an employee of a company or you're a client of a company, to be aware that this is happening. So regulations actually are our friend. We can talk about the disadvantages of AI regulation, but I'd rather focus on where it's going to help us. So notice that it can truly help us mitigate security risks. One of the things we're seeing is that globally, those that are working with this and wanting to promote the good are collaborating. And they've learned lessons, they've seen the mistakes, and they're making the recommendations. So become familiar with the recommendations about working with AI systems dependent on your role. And they have the information from designing, developing, maintaining, supporting, leveraging, as well as using. What should you be aware of? And that way we can actually promote best practices. We can think of it within industries, we can think of it within countries, we can think of it definitely just across all kinds of factors of life. And we're trying to promote having a refinement of these regulations to get consistency from it. So notice that the focus right now are on the risks and the biases that the coding, the logic, algorithms is the logic. Now, machine learning is the term for an area within AI, and that's what we've been talking about. So AI is the umbrella term, AI systems. We're working with machine learning, which is the code that is written to learn, that is going to be working with data, and it's going to correct itself. Did we get it right? So definitely we're looking for regulations around the data, algorithms, and definitely those that are going to be more involved and having an impact on human beings. So regulation is going to then leverage a lot of explainability to achieve its results. But like the way we've been protecting our information, just using things like our online banking, we're also looking at the implications of the type of data that different AI systems are trying to access and work with. Notice this is just a few months ago, October 2023, that by this time, 31 countries actually passed legislation and working on laws around the use of AI. And leading the way in the world is the EU, in that they have the world's first comprehensive AI law. Now, there's going to be some laws that are unique to individual countries, like how we saw that bit about publishing the algorithms that the Netherlands requires, but definitely focused around the data. There is consistency and agreement across the entire European Union. Excuse me. Now, for those of you that are in the States, and definitely other countries can benefit as well, but in the States, there's an emphasis on leaning on NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, to provide us the framework. They've already actually produced this. You can actually see what they have, the AI risk management framework, but they need to add more into it and to mature it out. And this is a different approach that the United States has taken compared to, actually, United States and UK have a very similar approach, and they're doing it more on an industry focus, whereas EU is doing more comprehensive thinking about personal individual rights. But in both cases, we're trying to make sure that at the end of the day, what we're creating is going to be good. So we have the development of new standards for safety and security coming out of NIST, and they're continually working on this. So you should be maybe on their mailing list. You should definitely go and check them out. And so as a cybersecurity specialist or somebody in an organization that has concerns around it, definitely take a look. And they have this concept here, AI red teams. If you remember in the early days of having the internet, the term ethical hacker. So you had the people that were trying to sneak into the back door of computing systems and organizations. That was called hacking. And then within the organization, and definitely in other technology service companies, they have ethical hackers. Well, that's what these guys are. Red teams are those that are trying to figure out how to compromise a system, but they're on the up and up. They're the good guys. So they're trying to outsmart those that have more malicious intents. And NIST is definitely being rather aggressive with that. And that came in back in December. The government actually required of them, they were given 270 days. Anybody quickly know how many months that is? How many weeks is that? To develop, notice here, the companion resource to their risk management framework. So definitely take a look, because as they create it, they're publishing what they have. So every week you can get something new. So this can empower you to get it right. And again, we come back to the fact all of this really started with data. Now, we've always had data, but I think the tipping point was around 2010. We had the maturing of cloud service providers that said, hey, we can store your data for it. You don't have to keep buying storage. We've got it for rent. And so that invited at a very affordable way for organizations not to let anything go. Kind of like a bit of hoarding going on, right? So we just, all the data comes in and it never leaves us. And I think it was reported that at that time we had more data stored than all the data accumulated over the history of mankind. Crazy numbers, so much data. How do we leverage it? That's where AI systems come in. They say, give me the data and I'll see the patterns. I will correlate the data, which will allow me to calculate out your content, making recommendations, doing predictions, watching for these patterns in the data. So data is the beginning of it. And notice it's the exploitation. This is one of the things that can happen is if I spoil the data, it spoils the results. So it's not just the logic, right? The algorithms, it's the underlying data itself. And we definitely want our algorithms to recognize when data is potentially compromised. Now, notice this bullet here. We want regulations, we want laws that are going to help us do it right, that are going to help protect us. But how do you actually enforce those laws? How do you actually find out when one of those laws have been compromised? So now we're looking at coming up with new tooling and frameworks. And these frameworks and tooling, by the way, are actually other AI systems. It's interesting, you know, which came first. So we create AI systems, and now we have to create AI systems to protect AI systems. Who's protecting the AI system doing the protection? Where does it end? And as a result, notice this piece down here, very time consuming and expensive. So this needs to be a shared effort. And in the world today, we do have larger governing bodies around the world that are working as teams. The lessons we learn here, we're sharing with others. And that the laws that they have is really about making sure that whoever owns the data gets to decide what's done with it. So your personal data, you should have the say in whether or not it gets stored. Kind of like when you go shopping, you don't have to have them store your credit card. Well, you should be able to tell them of the other information that's needed when you're interacting with one of their systems. What happens to that data that you put in there? Do they get to keep it? And if they're keeping it, how long do they get to keep it for, and how are they storing it? So a lot of what we talk about in AI security and ensuring the good focuses on the data logically, right? So notice that we're building up new data governance systems. to understand and complement how AI systems have that dependency, but it's also their Achilles heel. Focus here is that these AI systems that are now going to be tools for cybersecurity teams is to be able to create profiles of risk. They can see the patterns. The more we've got AI operating in the world, the more headlines and news, the more information these AI tools have to be able to do good predictions. And again, to help us design and protect our systems to ensure their longevity and reliability. So circling back, sort of ending our conversation here, is that we still have AI going on and we can get excited about it. There's a lot of good things happening out of this. Look at this. This was really exciting for me. So notice an AI system on its own, autonomously, was able to learn about the Nobel Prize winning chemical reactions, and it actually designed a laboratory procedure to make it happen. And it did that just in a few minutes, what would normally take us years to do, because they can actually process such high volumes of data so quickly, they're able to do in minutes. And this can actually give us so much more out of life if we can just do it right. Notice that it got it right the first time. And we're finding that the more we use these, the more we're actually thinking of an idea, and in the next moment we have it. We have the product that we wanted. So are we doing the good? Are our ideas right? Is this about improving the world at large, improving people's lives and our culture? But beware, for as much as we know, and as much as we have strategies to detect, prevent, and recover from any compromise, every day somebody figures out how to break it. So in this story here, the sleeper agent assistant can sabotage your code without you realizing it. This can happen and you don't see it. This is just from last week, January 16th. So notice it's actually able to generate code that makes your code vulnerable after a certain date. So it sleeps in there and the system didn't see it. It goes undetected. When we start seeing the malicious output, this is the even scarier part of this. When we start saying, oh my goodness, the system is broken, it's doing it wrong, what happened to it? Notice that our previous techniques for being able to correct our system, referred to as supervised fine tuning and reinforcement learning, these are just the labels we give the strategies that we've been using when we want to improve our system. They actually fail. They still can't find the sleeper agent. They can't correct the code. You're left with this system that you've invested a lot of time and money into, that you're dependent on for your work and your processes, is now something that you have to basically scratch. You have to throw it out. It's so badly damaged it doesn't exist anymore for use. And how did it get in there in the first place? So you have to figure out how it got broken, and then you have to rebuild the whole thing. So this is your update for today. Are you still excited about AI? You still want to use AI systems? You still want to actually rely on that for work? I would hope you would say yes, but I would hope you would put in the mechanisms to ensure that that never happens to you. They should not have been able to access and inject a malicious code like that. So what should we do? Well, I think the next step is AI systems are here to stay. It's up to us, based on our role, to make sure we're educated and we know what we need to do today in an ongoing basis to be able to contribute to the good. So as was mentioned by my colleague at the beginning, this is the beginning of a conversation. My expectation, and I hope it's true, you can let me know in the chat, is that you have more questions and concerns now than you did when you first arrived at the beginning of the hour. So join me for this conversation to continue to look at AI security, compliance, and explainability. Learn about some of the techniques and methods for it. Understand the frameworks and tools that we have to look inside and ensure that we're able to do the design and implementation correctly. And if you're somebody who's a little bit more technical, come join me for generative AI engineering. This is really learning about how to create your own AI system. So techniques and algorithms doing the design and implementation of generative AI models. Generative AI models, by the way, that's the term for an AI system that gives you output. So this is where it can create for you an essay. It can actually be that lab assistant that can actually tell you what the diagnosis is, or doing the predictions. We see that a lot in finance and being able to do wise investments. So a lot of organizations are building their own AI systems. And if you're tasked with being part of that, then come learn more about it, the generative AI engineering. And that web age solutions as part of Excel does have a whole library of training based on your roles. So obviously, if you're more on a product owner, a strategist in your organization, you would be looking at things from a slightly different perspective than those that are actually designing and implementing. This course, though, is designed for the broad audience. Anybody, this is a good place for organizations to start, just to get that awareness level up and for people to start thinking, how does this apply and how to my role? So thank you very much for your time. And I'm just going to pop over to take a look at the comments. I see that there's a number of questions and some comments. I'm going to read that. I am also making available, you might want to write it down, how to get a hold of me. You can look up my name, Christine Thompson, on LinkedIn, and feel free to reach out and join my community. And before you go, and while I take a look at the questions, I do have one more question for you. So let me just get back and let us know. Let me just. I'm not able to pull up the question. So for some reason, I can't launch this poll, but it's basically maybe let us know where you're at in your organization in terms of planning for AI. Do you have a plan? Yes or no? Or maybe you don't know. Let us know in the chat window. And I'm just definitely taking a look. I really appreciate all of the contributions in here. And let me go over to the questions. We've got a few minutes. I can take a look at this. So one of you added in at the top here, I'm just going through it in order. Worried about over dependence by my physicians not thinking for themselves. You know what? That's very, very accurate. When you think of it, this is what's happened with schools, right? When you need to write an essay, you get ChatGPT to generate it for you. And how do they detect that that's there? So that would be definitely something that we want to make good decisions about, because we don't want us to be overly dependent that you couldn't actually function as a human being. So what kind of regulations did we need to have in there to make sure that we as human beings don't become subject to the machines that we're trying to have ease our burden? Laws or bills to protect our data, like medical records, definitely like HIPAA in the United States, and definitely in Europe, they have their own governance on data protection, and they've led the way on that. They've been very, very granular. So there's definitely laws, and there's an interest in, particularly around AI systems that are processing this information, like your medical records or your financial records, that it needs to be much tighter, and making sure that it could be malicious in stealing, like a data breach, but it could also be the AI system itself not getting it right. So definitely that's one of the main focuses of the laws. Hopefully that answers your question. The bias of the training and information AI received would be a concern. It is a huge concern, and it's not as easy as you think in getting it correct. And this is why we talk about continuous improvement. We have to keep evaluating the results. And this is where explainability comes into play. We can detect that there was a bias based on how we read the explainability. So if you're interested in more about bias detection, learn more about explainability. And again, in that first course, we do talk about explainability, the techniques and frameworks we have to help us get that right. Is this because of people feeding unverified inputs into the model? Oh, that's a good point. So we talk about the prompt and how human beings are interacting with the AI system. And we need our AI system to have logic in there that says that's inappropriate, right? So we do have a whole discipline within AI design and implementation that centers on being able to verify the input, that is acceptable input versus unacceptable input. And then Kathy, you've mentioned here, is do no harm really a high enough bar? Kathy, I like the way you think, right? Harm is the least that we want to do. We want to actually produce the good, right? So we have to think about what AI systems really are going to help human beings and our culture and an organization versus hinder. Yeah, that's a very good point. Paid versions of AI applications seem to hold the idea that they are more secure than freeware. Yeah, Caitlin, this is an interesting comment that you have. One of the things about the paid version, why they can say that they're more secure, is the paid version you can actually host internally. So you're not dependent. It's like the difference between having a paid version of a private instance of cloud versus working with the public version of cloud. They're all secure, they're all going to isolate you, but the degree to which the isolation happens, paid versions of AI, is that you have a physical, not just a virtual isolation of it. So they do have a level of security that you don't find in the public versions of it. Does that help you, Caitlin? Hopefully it does. And Christian adding in there, can regulations start being implemented at the company level? Absolutely. And this is definitely, like I was just working with a client of mine, and that's the conversation we're having, is that while we're waiting, we're looking at what's already out there and making a decision for the company itself to have their own AI regulations. They already have the different procedures in place. And to Caitlin, your question, they made that option of being able to have their AI systems in-house. So only they get to see it and use it. So we're leveraging the physical isolation and separation and the layers of security we have about protecting our own networks as basically the front door to get into the building, to then have to get into the room where the AI systems are. And they have it highly regulated and an onboarding process. So it's not just willy-nilly. Not everybody can use these AI systems just because they're an employee of that company. So that's a really good question, and that's definitely the mindset that you want to have back at work. Did I answer everybody's questions? Anybody else have a question? I know we're just coming up to the top of the hour. Excellent way that you're thinking.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, Christine, this is the most interaction I think I've ever seen on a webinar. Everyone had such good questions and comments. I'm so pleased and grateful. Thank you for opening it up to make everyone comfortable.
Well, I do appreciate that. Thank you. It's a lot more interesting for me if I can actually connect with you guys. And I hope that maybe one day we'll actually get to work together. And I appreciate the conversation that's happening in the chat. Another comment, thank you, John, that you appreciated the benefits and risks and the conversation that we focused on. I think it's a good place to start for anybody in any role, right? We all need to be in agreement about that, looking to do AI the good. And Alan, you've added in there, looking at it from the point of view of law enforcement. How can it increase analyst forecasts? I'm not sure what you mean by how can it increase analyst forecasts. One of the thoughts, though, that your comment question is provoking in me is that's part of the disadvantage of regulating AI, is the fact that the ideas and the ability to work with it is happening so fast, and we haven't figured out yet the implications for it and who's going to regulate what and how. Yeah, good question. But it can actually slow things down if you get overly concerned with the vulnerabilities. Any other comments or questions? So good. Sad, I do see, is there security methods in place or being proposed to prevent AI from cannibalizing itself, producing less value? Absolutely. The cannibalizing, and we talk about hallucinations, AIs having hallucinations. It's actually, if you're curious about this, just a fun little exercise. You can, for free, go on to ChatGPT. You can just Google it, go there, and they give you a prompt. And you can put in maybe your resume or you can put in a request to say, oh, I'm applying for this job. Here's the job proposal. How can you sell me? And here's my degrees. And if you keep putting in the request, the more you do it, the more likely ChatGPT is to hallucinate. And it can go down this spiral and almost implode. So this is definitely where we focus on the algorithms and the neural networks. And there's a lot of excellent research coming out of academic institutions to help us with that. So yeah. So hopefully that answered your question and you'd be interested in learning more about it. Any other comments or questions? We're just at the top of the hour.
Yeah, we appreciate everyone hanging in there so long.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that you're here. We know you have a lot to do, but this was excellent, Christine. I think everyone got a ton out of this. I know I did. And you know, if you enjoyed 1 hour with Christine, the only thing better is 2 days with Christine.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
put the link in the chat
Thank
to
you.
the course that maps with this webinar. So obviously the actual course gets really more in depth, can be customized. You get Christina on the phone. She's really great at listening and being able to tailor the class if you have a group. And also, of course, it comes with hands-on exercises and a lot more in-depth discussion.
And before we close it, I just noted Caitlin had another question. And just to let you know, in each industry that are using these things, most of them self-regulate by ensuring that you get a review. And this is the idea of the continuous, but you'd have to contact an individual legal office to find out what their practices are. So right now we don't have a standard for it. And I noticed Liberty is asking, will we get a recording of this? Yes, Anne's going to follow up with the email. You're going to get the link to re-listen to this. And again, if you have any other requests, just reach out to Anne you can see there. Did they get your contact information or how to get a hold of you? Would it be just through the Web-based Solutions site?
But yeah, you know what? Let me, if I could, I'll just share my screen.
Sure. Let me stop sharing.
Quick. Okay, thank you. So, see if you can see the screen, and it's the class that goes to the site. So if you just go to the link that I've put in the chat, you'll come here and you can request on-site or customized course info, and we'll get right back to you if you've got your, a team or your organization for upskilling. And there are also, there's a lot of modules in this class with labs, but there are also public dates for you to enroll in if you just have 1 or 2 people for the class. So you can just contact us through the website, either from the request on-site customized info or just on the contact button up there. And also after we'll send you an email with the recording, and there'll also be contact information on that email. So definitely look out for that.
Great. Thank you.
All right. All right.
All right. So have a great week, everybody. Hope to hear from you soon.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate you coming in. Christine, thank you so much for your time. I know you're very busy and sought after, and we really appreciate you coming here and doing this. So
thank you for your support, Anne. All right.
Thank you. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day. See you next time.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.